Hey, I'm Courtney Jenkins with All in Wonder, and today I want to talk to you about welcoming families who have special needs into your church, even if you don't have an established special needs ministry, and how you can welcome them and prepare for them to come. The first thing is being prepared for them to actually walk into your doors on a Sunday morning. So, not being surprised when someone shows up who has special needs. We want to show them that we are excited for them to be there, that we have prepared ourselves with knowledge to be able to serve them and their child well. So, what does that look like? What does it look like to be prepared? One, we can prepare some supplies. So, maybe having a toolkit that has some fidgets in it, has some sensory toys in it, maybe having some noise canceling headphones if you have like a large group environment where there's a lot of noise and loud music, things like that. So, just having supplies on hand that you can pull out when you need it, but that you may not necessarily need right now in the moment, but you're going ahead and preparing for those people to come. The second thing is preparing questions. What are some questions that you need to be asking families when they show up? We're going to talk about that more here in just a minute. But the third thing in preparing for them to come is preparing yourself with knowledge, one, of different types of disabilities. What does it mean when they say that their child has autism? You need to have some working knowledge of what that disability looks like, how that's going to affect the child in the environment that you are welcoming them into. And then just some tips, preparing yourself with some tips of how to serve well people with different types of disabilities. The second thing that you need to do to be able to be more welcoming when individuals with disabilities come into your children's ministry is training your volunteers and your check-in staff, crew, volunteers, and that's going back to those questions. So, what are some qualifying questions that they should ask any new family who comes in? So, if you have a separate check-in area, this is a great time to ask these questions. If you don't, the actual classroom volunteers would need to be able to be prepared to ask these types of questions. But just like you would check in and ask for contact information for parents, things like that, adding in the question of, are there any special needs that your child has? Is there any disabilities that we need to be aware of? Are there any medical needs that we should be aware of? And giving the parents the opportunity to communicate to you and to your volunteers about any special needs that their child might have. So then being able to say, great, we're so glad that you're here. When they answer with an affirmative, yes, my child does have some special needs, then let them know, hey, we're going to follow up with you this week. We're going to talk to you more about how we can best serve your child. But today, are there any tips that you can give me of some things that we should definitely avoid for your child? Is there things that make them uncomfortable? Are there any things that they absolutely love that would help us to connect with them? Just simple questions like that at that initial meeting and those first conversations are going to really show that you care, that you're prepared for serving families like them. So another thing that would be important is then to reassure the parents, hey, we're going to love on your child. We're excited for them to be here. We will let you know if we need anything. Go enjoy the service. We're so glad that you're here. Reaffirming, hey, we've got this, but we know that you are the expert, and if we have any problems, we're going to come get you, because that's one thing that I've heard that special needs parents say is that they're worried that volunteers won't come get them if there's an actual problem. So we want to let them know that yes, that is something that we will do. Another thing for training your volunteers is before the situation comes up, giving them some tips and some just classroom management ideas for working with students and kids with disabilities. So maybe you have a quarterly training, just adding in some little things about how to serve kids with disabilities. And then maybe if you have like a box in the classroom where you put supplies in, or however your situation looks like, you can have just a laminated sheet of some tips that would be helpful if they get a kid in the classroom and they're like, I can't remember what we talked about in that last training, but there's just a reference sheet of, here are some good reminders for working with kids with disabilities. So that's one way to train your volunteers. And then third way to prepare and welcome families with disabilities is following up with parents after that first initial visit. Just saying welcome, like, we're so glad that you came. We enjoyed having whoever the child's name is, and ask to get together. Tell them, hey, I would love to just discuss with you how we can better serve your family, how we can best serve your child, and reaffirm that you know that they are the expert on their child and you want to learn from them and you want to be able to serve the best that you can. And just ask questions about how their child best works in a classroom environment, best connects with people, with other peers, things like that. And having that one-on-one conversation. Maybe prefer a phone call or something like that if you can't make it work to get together in person. But just making that touch of saying, I care enough to take time to get to know you and your family and your child is going to make a huge difference. Another thing with follow-up with parents is having a new family form that just has a list of questions that you can give the parent that they can take and they can fill out maybe after that initial meeting, and just give you more information. This way you can give this to any volunteer who would be serving with this child, and the parent doesn't feel like every time they come to church they have to relay this information again and again to new volunteers. They can trust that you have communicated this, that you've communicated the needs and the tips that the parent has shared with all of the volunteers who would be working with the child. The fourth thing that I suggest is then putting the plan that you come up with into place. So coming up with a plan of, let me take all this information the parent has given me and let's put these supports into place. So it doesn't have to be a separate ministry in order to provide special needs children and families with the supports that they need in the classroom. So use the information they give you. Maybe you need to add in some visual supports into the classroom environment. Maybe you need to create a break area. Maybe you need to have some of those sensory items available. Figure out with the parent how you can best serve and put that plan into place. And then build the relationship. So once you've got the plan in place and they start coming and you start seeing how the plan is working, reevaluate the plan and communicate with the family by building that relationship, developing good communication, being able to say, hey, this is how it went today in church. Let me know if there's something else that you want us to try. Just constantly having that communication is going to be essential. So maybe you're thinking, but we've already got people in our ministry who have disabilities and we haven't done any of these things. What do we do? What should we do now? First of all, just communicate that to the parents and say, hey, we are so glad that you're here and we recognize that it's a need that us as volunteers, us as leadership, we want to be more intentional with serving your child, serving your family. So reach out and kind of follow those steps again, but in a way that you already know the family. So say, hey, I'd love to grab coffee and let's just talk about some things. So ask them, what are the biggest challenges for you when you come to church? What are the biggest challenges for your child that you have found? And just encouraging that open and honest communication and not being offended by what they tell you, and then being willing to train your volunteers, being willing to put a plan in place and accommodate those needs that the child has. So if you are looking for some easy resources to be able to pull and use for welcoming new families into your ministry, check out the shop. We have a new family welcome kit that has a lot of the things that you'll need, and you can print, you can customize. We've got some social stories that show exactly like, this is what it's going to look like when you come into church, and you can edit and you can add in pictures of your church just to be able to give to parents and say, hey, read this with your child at home to help them better prepare for coming to church, and they'll be more comfortable, things like that. So that's in the shop at specialneedsministryresources.com with All in Wonder. So thanks so much for tuning in. Let me know if you have any questions at all. And I look forward to hearing about how you are welcoming new families into your church.